Music millionaire pretends to be paralyzed to test his fiancée. Malik Hart had it all: wealth, power, and the woman he believed was his future. But the moment he faked an accident and returned home in a wheelchair, Sloane's mask slipped. The woman who once smiled for cameras now rolled her eyes at his requests, poured water over him in disgust, and whispered with his business partner about a plan that went far beyond betrayal. Malik stayed silent, watching, waiting, letting their cruelty deepen. What neither Sloane nor Carter knew was that the paralyzed millionaire wasn't weak at all, and the day he chose to stand would turn their perfect wedding into a public reckoning. Before we go any further, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now, let's begin. The morning of the engagement brunch had smelled like citrus polish and expensive coffee. Malik Hart, quiet billionaire, sleeves rolled, watch face turned inward, had moved through his own penthouse like a guest. He adjusted a cuff, exhaled, and watched the city smear into light beyond the glass. Sloane Whitmore glided in behind him, silk dress whispering, perfume bright and sharp. She smiled for the room, not for him. Little things told the story first. A server reached to refill her flute. She tilted the glass without looking up, then wiped the rim with a linen napkin like his staff were a disease. A florist apologized for a late PE, and Sloane's jaw tightened before she said, "Fix it," with that smooth TV anchor voice that made commands sound like compliments. Malik felt a note of it in his sternum. He had fallen for her elegance, the easy conversation, the ambition that matched his stride. But away from the spotlight, she drifted. She scrolled in the elevator while a concierge greeted her by name. She never remembered the driver's kid had a birthday. She said, "We when plans were glamorous and you when something needed doing near the espresso machine." Two baristas whispered like steam. "She's pretty sure," one said, keeping eyes on the cups. "But the vibe." "Cool," the other answered under the hiss of milk frothing. "He seems decent. Hope he sees what we see." Their words weren't cruel, just weary, like people who had learned to read weather. Malik tried to give grace. People had bad days, long weeks. He had been taught to look for patterns, not moments. Still, patterns had begun to stack, tiny, precise, undeniable. He felt it when she guided him toward a photographer. Palm lighted his spine, smiles set like armor. He felt it when she corrected an assistant's tray placement by moving it 2 in, then smiled as if she had saved the party. He felt it in the silences that followed her footsteps, the way air seemed to hold itself waiting. "Babe, chin up," she said once, tilting his face with a manicured finger. "You look tired." He'd laughed it off, because men like him learned early to swallow unease and keep the room comfortable. But a thought kept knocking. If money vanished, if health faltered, would she stay or simply stay dressed? By the balcony, the city wind cooled his skin. He watched Sloane rehearse her smile in a window reflection, just a fraction warmer than perfect. He wasn't judging, he was measuring. Wealth had taught him many things, but this was the oldest. Love that required stage. Lighting wasn't love. It was PR. Downstairs, the doorman told a porter. "She's got that magazine look, but kindness?" "Not sure." The porter shrugged, shouldered a crate. "Looks fade. Habit doesn't." Their voices rose and fell with the lobby's hum, a background chorus Malik hadn't asked for but could not hear. He breathed slow and even. He had built his empire by testing systems under pressure, contracts, teams, even technology. You don't trust a bridge because it looks pretty. You trust it because you've driven heavy weight across it and it didn't shake. As the brunch glittered and flashed around him, a quiet decision formed, one measured blank at a time. If love was real, it would hold when the ground shifted. If it wasn't, the fall would show him the truth. He lifted his glass, smiled for the cameras, and let the room believe the fairy tale. Inside, he began crafting a different kind of test. No rush, no drama, just gravity applied slowly. It began with a whisper Malik wasn't supposed to hear. Late evening, the house had emptied after another round of tastings and fittings. The chandeliers still hummed with trapped heat. Malik stepped down a back hallway, tie loosened, looking for silence more than anything. He paused when voices carried through the half-open, steady door. Sloane's voice first, smooth, clipped. "It's almost done." He's too wrapped up to notice. Marriage, then divorce. Settlement will make everything mine. A man's laugh answered lower, familiar. His business partner, Carter Hale. Malik froze, every tendon in his hand tightening on the doorframe. Carter, the man who had once signed documents with him in cramped offices, who had been best man in another friend's wedding, leaning close to his fiancée. "You'll be set for life," Carter said. "The prenup, he won't dare enforce it when the press is watching." Sloane's response was colder than marble. "He'll be paralyzed by shame if nothing else, and when I'm through, we'll own every inch of him." Malik backed away, silent, though his heart thudded like an echo in the hall. Rage tried to claw up his throat, but discipline pressed it down. He had built his empire by studying markets, knowing when to move and when to wait. This would be no different. In the kitchen later, the maid, Rosa, caught his eye. She had been clearing glasses near the study and looked as if she carried a weight she didn't want. "Sir," she began, hesitant. Malik raised a hand gently. "I heard," he said. Her relief and guilt tangled in her sigh. She nodded once, then bent back to her work, as if nothing had passed between them. The next day, gossip trickled through the staff like watered-down stone. "By the pantry, she's after his money. You think he knows?" "By the garage, boss trusts too easy. Watch, she'll show her real face." None of them dared say it to Malik, but their glances told him enough. They worried for him, pitied him even. He carried himself as if blind, though inside he measured every detail. Carter's sudden closeness, Sloane's new sharpness with his team. He remembered the champagne toast where she leaned into Carter's ear just a beat too long. He remembered Carter patting his shoulder and saying, "You're a lucky man," with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. That night, Malik stood before his mirror, jacket undone, reflection heavy with thought. Betrayal wasn't a thunderclap, it was a slow leak that finally flooded the room. He pressed his palms against the counter, steadying himself, whispering under his breath, "If you want the truth, let's see how deep it goes." The plan began forming not as revenge, but as revelation. He would build a stage not for their lies, but for their choices. They would reveal themselves under pressure, the way glass shatters when tapped. The next morning, his voice was calm when he told his driver to slow down outside the gates, letting whispers of an accident seed in the air. His assistant looked confused, then nodded. Malik didn't explain. A man didn't test markets by telling the markets he was testing them. He simply acted, then waited for truth to surface. The mask of wealth, health, and power was about to crack on his own terms. The news spread carefully, just enough to sound believable. A car accident, a fracture that pressed on his spine. Malik let the story breathe on its own, circulating through whispers and concerned calls. By the time he returned home in a wheelchair, his world looked staged, but no one questioned it. He had made sure of that. The first days were a study in contrast. His staff leaned in with concern. Fresh soups, careful lifts over thresholds, the kind of kindness that didn't ask for thanks. Sloane, however, showed her hand almost immediately. At first she offered the right words, but the eyes behind him flickered with annoyance. When he asked for water one evening, she sighed as if he had demanded gold. "Again," she muttered, setting the glass on the table so hard it slashed. Malik observed silently. He didn't need her love rehearsed for the cameras. He needed to see her unmasked in private. Each her mask slipped further. She walked ahead, leaving doors half shut, so he struggled. She left him parked in the sun too long during a garden lunch. The first time she rolled her eyes at his request in front of Rosa. The maid stiffened, jaw tightening, but said nothing. Then came the financial shift. Malik staged a rumor through a contact at the bank. Stocks frozen, accounts under review. Word drifted back into his household with quiet inevitability. That evening, he watched her scroll on her phone, jaw set hard. "So," she said flatly, "how bad is it?" He gave her a tired smile and answered, "Let's just say things aren't as solid as before." Her silence told more than questions could. She didn't ask about his health. She didn't reach for his hand. She stared at the ceiling like calculating an exit. A few days later, the cruelty sharpened. A careless splash of cold water over his lap. A muttered insult when she thought no one was near. Worthless, he heard once, spat between teeth. He said nothing. His pulse steadied, though inside his chest, the betrayal pulsed raw. The bystanders noticed. Near the pantry, two cooks whispered, "She doesn't even hide it anymore." One replied, "Boss deserves better. He's blind if he doesn't see." They didn't know Malik could pause just out of sight. Hearing every word, their pity felt heavier than his wheelchair. Worst of all was Carter's reappearance. Malik pretended to sleep on the terrace when Carter leaned close to Sloan. Their words slithered into his ears. "He's a shell now," Carter murmured. "Exactly," Sloan replied, brushing hair from her face. "Soon I'll be free of this charade, and you'll be there with me." Malik's stomach tight. Ined. Rage pressed hard against restraint, but he stayed still, breathing shallow, eyes shut. Let them think I'm weak. Let them think I'm him blind. Every cruel detail was a blade they placed in his hand without knowing. That night, alone in the dim of his study, Malik wheeled himself to the mirror. His reflection looked tired, older, but steady. He whispered, voice low and fierce, "Keep going. They'll show the world exactly who they are." And so the test deepened. He would not stop at halfway. He would take it to the edge until their greed reached for something darker than insult or neglect, because only then could justice be undeniable. The cruelty no longer hid behind smiles. It walked boldly through the halls. Malik noticed it in small things first. Meals arriving late, lukewarm, as if an afterthought. Doors left just wide enough for his chair to snag. A jacket dropped on his lap with no word. He told himself to hold steady, to wait. Every insult was another brushstroke on the portrait of who Sloan truly was. Then came the evening of the storm. Rain pressed against the tall windows, thunder rolling like a warning drum. Malik sat in the lounge, book open but unread, when he caught the sharp tang of chemicals in his glass of water. Faint bitter, he set it down without a word, pulse thrumming across the room. Sloan's gaze flicked once, quick and measuring. He didn't drink. Not that night. 2 days later, Rosa found him in the kitchen, face pale, whispering low, "Sir, I think they're trying something worse. I saw Carter in the pantry pouring something into a vial, and Sloan told the chef you'd never recover." Her hands twisted in her apron. "I can't stay quiet anymore." Malik placed a hand on hers. "Steady. You've done enough. Leave the rest to me." His voice was calm, but inside fury pressed like a storm tied against a dam. The gossip spread amongst staff like smoke. By the garden gates, she's killing him slow, and Carter isn't on it. By the laundry room, boss looks thinner. If he dies, she wins. The pity in their voices cut deeper than Sloan's insults. Malacre them all, storing every word, every whisper. That night, he lay in bed, pretending sleep. Sloan stood by the door, phone glowing against her face. "It won't be long," she whispered to Carter on the other end. "He's weak, helpless. Once the wedding is done, we'll have everything." A soft laugh followed, cruel and certain. Malik's eyes stayed shut, but his jaw clenched until it ached. He wanted to roar, to confront, to end it. But just as built-in silence is louder when it breaks, he reminded himself of that slowly, steadily. He let them pile their sins high, so that when reckoning came, there would be no escape. The next morning, Sloan poured water over his shirt, scolding. "Look at you, pitiful." Her voice dripped venom. Carter stood in the corner, smiling faintly like a man enjoying a private joke. Malik stayed still, expression blank, heart a drum in his chest. He had tested markets, tested men, tested empires. Now he had tested love, and what he saw was rot. The stage was almost set. The wedding day loomed, a gathering storm waiting to break. Malik would let them play their final hand there before everyone, and when it did, their downfall would echo louder than thunder. The church gleamed with ivory roses and gold-trimmed aisles, a picture-perfect fairy tale. Guests whispered as Malik was wheeled in, suit pressed, expression calm. To them, he was the brave groom, weakened but determined to wed the woman he loved. To him, it was the final act of a carefully staged play. Sloan floated down the aisle in white silk, veil trailing like victory. Carter stood among the groomsmen, his smirk faint but present. They thought the crown was already theirs. The vows began, words filling the hushed air. Malik lifted his eyes to hers. "Do you promise to love me in sickness and in health?" the officiant asked. Sloan's pause was too long, her smile too thin. "I do," she whispered, voice shaking, not with devotion, but calculation. Malik raised a hand, stopping the ceremony. The crowd shifted, puzzled murmurs rising. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed himself up from the chair. First his hands, then his legs, strong, steady, gasps rippled like thunder through the hall. Sloane's face drained of color. Carter froze. Malik's voice cut through the silence. For months, I'll let you show me who you really are. I heard the plans, the insults, the poison. His words carried weight, not anger, just truth. You thought my weakness was your ladder. Today, it's your mirror. Uniformed officers stepped forward from the side doors. They had been waiting, evidence in hand, Rose's testimony, recordings, the tampered vials. The crowd parted as the officers clasped Carter's wrists, then Sloane's. Her veil slipped as she struggled, her mask gone. Guests whispered fiercely. She planned this all along, and with his partner, unbelievable. Malik straightened fully. No chair beneath him, no weakness left to feign. He looked at the stunned faces and said, steady and clear, wealth can buy a stage, but only character fills it. True love never spits on weakness. It stands when everything else falls. As Sloane and Carter were let out, silence hung, broken only by the rustle of disbelief. Malik glanced at Rosa near the back, her eyes shining, head bowed in quiet relief. The fairy tale had ended, but the truth had spoken louder than vows. In the end, Malik proved that true love isn't found in riches, but in loyalty, when the world thinks you're at your weakest. If this story made you think twice about trust and betrayal, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next twist. And if you know someone who needs this lesson, share it with them. Because stories like this aren't just entertainment, they're reminders.